Okay, so today I'm going to show you some actual code. This is code I wrote over 10 years ago now, but is for a plugin for a bash shell to keep track of the directories you cd into and then make them accessible to you as a stack. I showed this off in a previous video, but I'm actually going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the code. So just to get you up to speed, let's show right here. If I run S, I see nothing. Let me cd into temp, let me cd into var, maybe I'll go to lib, and then I'll go back to my home directory. If I run S again, you can see it keeps track of the last directories I was in. And then from here I can say, you know what, let me jump back a directory. Okay, where am I? I'm in var lib. I jumped one back. Let me jump to temp, so I can do S3, and it will pull me into the third in the stack. So that's how it works. Really simple, really cool, super useful. It just keeps track of how you directories that you cd'd into. So how does this work? Well, we can actually take a look here. Let me go into my scratch directory. And I've checked out the code. If you want to check out the code, you can. I think it's somewhere here. Yeah, it's on GitHub. It's on Bahamas 10 GitHub. You can go ahead and check it out that way, but I already checked it out. So let's see what we got now that we're in here. Okay, we have one file, cdstack.bash, that actually matters, and we'll look inside it, and what do we have? So we have a bunch of documentation. I wrote a comment at the top. You can feel free to read that on your own time. But we have a configuration right here. You can override this with environmental variables. So cd stack max, I have that set to 15 by default. You can change that number to whatever you want. And cd stack reverse, this just reverses the order of how it's printed if you want the last at the top or you want the last at the bottom. I have it at the top by default, but some people like it at the bottom. So how does this work? Well, internally we have two variables. An array of all of the directories that we've been in, and we initialize it with the present working directory. And then we have a pointer. This points to the spot in the array that we're currently looking at. So that little arrow in the output, that's what this would point to. So by default, we point to the only element in the array, the first one. So how do we do this? We override cd. We create a function called cd, so we're overriding the built-in cd to call our own. And the first thing we do is we call the built-in cd. We give it whatever arguments you gave it, and then we check to see if it was successful. This is key, because if cd fails, if you try to cd to a directory that doesn't exist or you don't have permission, we don't want to keep track of it. We don't want to keep it in the stack. We only want to keep track of CDs that were successful. So we throw it out if it fails, and then what we do, we keep track of the directory, we put it at the beginning of the stack, so we push it onto the stack, and then we do our trimming logic here. So this is if we're above the maximum, we get rid of the last element, so we basically throw them out after we hit 15 or whatever the user's defined. And then we reset the pointer to 0 because we just cd'd into a new place, so we're going back to 0. And then we return the original return code, which should be 0 here. So then what do we have? We have S. This is that command that I showed you before. If we give it an argument, we have to go get that specific directory from the cd stack, and then we cd into it. If we don't give it an argument, we run this command. This goes through and lists all of the directories. So we actually loop the stack. We print where we are, we print the arrow if it's the current one, no arrow if it's not, and then we actually print this. We change out the user's home directory with tilde just because it looks nicer, and that's pretty much why we do it. And then the B command, this is to jump back one. Because we've implemented the S command, it's super easy here. We just S to whatever the current pointer is plus 1. So we go back one. If we're currently pointing at spot 0 and you press B, we want to go to spot 1 because that's the next one in the list and that's the next one in the stack. So we just increment it by 1, and there you go. That's how the cd stack thing works in bash.